Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to do another top 5 list, and as you can tell by the title, it's going to be Primarchs. Now I did this a couple of weeks ago with Successor Chapters, which ones I loved and stuff like that, and I got an awesome amount of feedback on that. People were telling me to do warbands, but of course one that stood out the most was, hey Varrock, can you do your top 5 Primarchs? So here we are, this is what we're going to be doing today. Now of course, just like last video, I'm going to leave my Dorn / Imperial Fist bias out of it, so I'm going to be doing a list that doesn't have Dorn in it, because that's the kind of a spoiler. I'm always going to put Dorn at the top, so this list is without Glorious Dorn. So we'll start at number 5 and we'll work our way down to that glorious number 1 spot. So number 5 for me is everyone's most lovable Primarch, and that is Vulcan. I absolutely just love everything about Vulcan. I love everything about the Salamanders. The creed is inspired in him. Vulcan is all about humanity. He will not sacrifice humanity for a mere win, no matter the cost to his legion. And of course, if you've been reading the Horace Heresy, you'll understand how devastating his story was. He went to Isfahan. He was ambushed on Isfahan. He lost his legion on Isfahan. He was imprisoned then in a maze designed by Primarchs, which was controlled by Comrade Kurz, who twisted, butchered him, tortured him, all the kind of things you expect that Night Lords would do to someone. They did that tenfold to glorious Vulcan, and I actually did feel really sorry for him, because there was some absolute cruel mind games that Kurz put on him. Like, he put one of his favourite sons in there, tortured him just to tease him, just to try and get a reaction out of Vulcan. And of course, inside this killer maze prison thing, Vulcan was killed multiple times. But of course, we all know that Vulcan is a perpetual, so no matter how many times you kill Vulcan, he will always come back to life. That is why the rumor is, in the 41st millennium, where we're at now in the timeline, that Vulcan is somewhere out there, and hopefully that he will be returning to the forefront and bringing his glorious hammer and wrath upon the Xenos and the heretic, whatever that may be. Now of course, the biggest spoiler about this is that Vulcan is actually on Terra during the siege. Now, as far as we're aware, I've been reading the Siege of Terra books, he hasn't really interacted or done anything as of yet. I'm up to the first wall at the moment by Gav Thorpe. That is the only 3 books that are out. We have the Solar War, the Lost and the Damned, and the First Wall. Hopefully the next one will be coming out soon, and maybe he'll be featured in that. But what Vulcan's place is at the moment on Terra is that he's more or less the gatekeeper during the underground war, or the secret war, let's say, with the custodians, the demons, all that in the webway. He's kind of a failsafe. So if Terra is lost, he basically has a device that will just nuke Terra, everyone on it. It will the power from it will backlash into the webway, destroy all the demons in there, and it will cause this mass fallout where basically no one wins. But he is the failsafe at the moment on Terra. Now moving on to number 4, this is where it starts getting a bit chaotic, I'm afraid, brothers and sisters. So number 4 for me is none other than Angeron. I absolutely love Angeron. I love his rage, I love his bloodlust, I just love his personality, and I feel sorry for him really more than any other Primarch, because Angeron never really had the chance of glory that his brothers had. Like, Angeron was always enslaved as a child. He had the butcher's nails put into his head. He was always twisted, manipulated by this device. He could never live the life which he could choose. It was always chosen for him. Of course, that always ended up in the gladiatorial pits, fighting, killing, butchering. That's what the nails came in for. That's what made him work, push harder, kill stronger, and stuff like that. And we all know the story where there was an uprising, and then he started to lead his brothers and sisters on his planet to take back their freedom. Now, the really twisted thing about this, and again, it's not really explained, it's probably kind of a plot device really for maybe his fall into chaos, is that when the Emperor found Angeron, he was doing his final assault to get his freedom back, but he was massively outnumbered. More or less, he was going to get wiped out along with all his brothers and sisters that he served with, but the Emperor intervened. Now, the Emperor didn't intervene by sending down the World Eaters or the Custodians or even the Emperor himself down in there, which he probably could have just like mind flayed them all. Instead, he teleported Angeron to his ship to save him, and all the brothers and sisters who he loved, who he grew up with, were slaughtered, just absolutely butchered, and that was the end of that. And Angeron, from that moment, just lived in regret, sorrow, and that's where I personally think his rage and his downfall really began, because of the Emperor's actions on that day. So for me, that's where the sorrow part comes into it, because Angeron just wanted to die. He wanted to die with his brothers. He wanted to die in honor, and instead he was put with the Legion, like the Legion Astartes of the World Eaters, which, well, sorry, they were called the War Warhounds, and then they were renamed the World Eaters when Angeron took over them. They basically never had the love for their Primarch that other legions did, because Angeron never loved them in return. There's like numerous quotes of like piss on Angeron's grave and stuff like that from Legion Astartes once they lay dying, because they had no respect, they had no love that those other legions did. So that's where the sorrow part comes into it. Now, I've always said this during streams and stuff, that if we ever got new World Eater kits, new Angeron demonic model, for the tabletop, I would instantly buy that, and I would instantly start a chaotic World Eater army, because I just think there's just so much cool about him. Khan the Betrayer, chain axes, blood, death, skulls for the Skull Throne. I'm completely sold in on that. So that's why really Angeron is in my top 5 slot when it comes to Primarchs I like the most. Now, moving on to number 3, and we're actually going to stay with a Chaos Primarch, probably the greatest of all the Chaos Primarchs, most well-known greatest. The first, well, I'd say first of all. He wasn't the first of all. Lorgar was the first of all. But the third one for me, my top 3, is Horace Lupercal. I absolutely love Horace. I love Horace, and I love the Lunar Wolves so much, is that when the Horus Heresy first started, we started to get the models and stuff, and there's rumour of it, we started to get the Mark III plate and stuff from Forge World. I was completely sold to do a Lunar Wolf Force, because once I read Horus Rising, I was addicted. I loved everything about Horace. I loved how charismatic he was. I loved how he interacted with his fellow brothers, his sons, how they all trusted him, how much they loved him. It was absolutely great. I got to a point during the Horus Heresy, like I start with Horus Rising, and then, of course, Galaxy Inflamed ended up, and I didn't want to finish the book, because I was like, I know what's going to happen. I know what happens to Horace, and I didn't want to, I just wanted to just get rid of the book, because I just felt to myself, I don't want to see this character who I love so much fall to chaos and turn in the way he did against the Emperor, against the Imperial Dream, against his sons. He wiped out most of his sons on Isfahan, trapped them and stuff like that, and they were all wiped out, the ones he couldn't trust. And I was like, I can't do this. I love this character so much. I just can't put myself through it. Of course I did. I got there in the end. I just had to push myself through. And after I finished that, I hand on heart, I haven't gone back and reread it or anything like that. I just can't bear with the pain, because that's how much I love this character. I think the most heartbreaking thing for me is, and I'm sure some people are disagreeing this, it's probably going to be the Chaos fanboys in chat, but he was tricked. He was duped by the Chaos gods. They told him lies. The Emperor was this, the Emperor was that. They needed Horus for their plans to bring down the Imperium, to bring down the Emperor and his secret projects, everything that went along with it, and they lied to him. And it's just such a shame, in hindsight, that you think to yourself, my God, he could have been the greatest. He could have led humanity to the peak of its evolution, and we could have conquered the galaxy, and it could have been ours. Horace, why did you fall? Why did you have to fall? Why did you have to believe these tricks, Horace? We loved you. I loved you. Dorn loved you. The Imperial Fist loved you. The Emperor loved you. Why did you have to do this? Okay, let's move on to the top 2 Primarchs before I start sobbing like an Iron Warrior. So, number 2, it has to be none other than the First Legion Primarch, Lionel Johnson. My God, this guy has an incredible, funny personality. He's an absolute beast in combat as well. Now, the main reason I love Lionel Johnson is down to his personality. Of course, he's a badass when it comes to the sword. We'll get to that in a second. But his personality is what really, really sticks out to me. He's one of these people where one day you can have a logical conversation with him, and then the next day he could be the most shut-away, broody person you've ever met in your life. Like some of the interactions he has between Guilliman, Horace, some of the other Primarchs in the short stories, they're absolutely hilarious. Of course, Lehman Ross, he has that rivalry with Lehman Ross. Lehman Ross used to be in my top 5, but over the course of the Horus Heresy, reading the books and stuff like that, Lehman Ross really fell out of favour. I'm not saying he's awful or anything like that. He's definitely in my top 10. Of course he's in my top 10. But Lionel Johnson, the more I read about him, the more the interactions I read, I just come to love him as a Primarch. And as I mentioned as well, he's an absolute beast when it comes to actually fighting. Now, for those of you, there's probably a complete different list, like top 5 Primarchs when it comes to fighting. But the reason I respect Lionel Johnson so much when it comes to his combat is that he bested Conrad Kurz. Of course, him and Conrad Kurz went back and forth yesterday, have victories over each other, but for anyone that can beat someone who he doesn't potentially, he can see the future actions of individuals and stuff like that. He can see in the future. So for someone who can beat those odds and bring him, imprison him, beat him down, break his back, you have to respect, you have to. I'm sorry if you don't like Lionel Johnson, you have to respect how much of a badass he is when he's in full-on beast combat mode. And of course the style of not him, but his Legion as well, is that knightly kind of order. I'm a massive fan of the Black Templars, and I really like that they're a part of that Dornian range. But if they didn't have that, then I'd be completely sold on making some Dark Angels, because they have that knightly aspect that I absolutely love when it comes to making models. And moving on to number 1, it has to be none other than Mr. Lightning Bolt himself, Jagatai Khan, the Korgan, as the White Scars say. Boy oh boy, do I love Mr. Jagatai. Do you know what? I was never really a fan of the White Scars. Didn't really think anything of it. I never disliked him. Never really liked him. I just thought, okay, cool. People on bikes, they like to go fast. There's nothing, it's nothing really out there. But then Chris Wright wrote the White Scar backstory when it came to the Horace Heresy, all about their culture, how their interactions with the Imperium, their tactics, their just everything about their, Did I bloody mention the culture? I'm not too sure. I'm just so excited. But boy, oh boy, he completely... I remember reading the first book, and I think it was called Scars, if I'm not mistaken. There's Scars, and there's Brotherhood of the Storm. There's so many that he's bloody wrote. Just please go and look him up. And I was just sold. Like, he made Jagatai Khan this just absolute beast of a Primarch, like not only in combat, which again we'll get to in a second, but his personality. He was always out there where he didn't really want to take orders. He didn't really want to choose a side, but he was forced into it. There's so much emotion behind his story, his dilemma. He loved Horace, he loved Magnus, but he saw the darkness that Mortarion was accepting when he was, before his potential fall. He saw all this and he disliked it, and then of course he went and picked the side of the Emperor, and it's an amazing scene. I don't really want to spoil it, but he's fighting like a great demon of Slaanesh, and he shouts, "For the Emperor!" And I'm like, oh my god, this is absolutely amazing. And of course I've been reading about him on the Siege of Terror as well, and some of the stuff he's been doing out there. There's like this kind of Rohirrim cavalry charge from the White Scars, led by Jagatai Khan, over the walls of Terror, like vroom, 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 like going across like all the Imperial Guard heads who are in the trenches and stuff. And it's absolutely, he like rides into the line of the Death Guard, starts chopping them all up just to save the civilians and stuff like that. Oh, it's just so good. The story about Jagatai Khan is just amazing, and I just love everything about him, how he interacts with humanity. He like Vulcan cares for humanity as well, and the way he looks at death and stuff, a good death is to die with a smile or laugh on your face and stuff like. It's just so good. I love everything about him. So there we go, that is my top 5 list when it comes to my favourite Primarchs. But of course I want to do a nice honourable mention list, because it's always nice to mention Primarchs that weren't in the top 5. So firstly, let me just say Sanguinius is definitely on the honourable mentions list. I know there's going to be people in the comment section, how dare you, Varak, Sanguinius, my glorious Hawk boy, how dare you not include him? The reason I never included him is that I really haven't been connected to him in the story that much. Like, the books I've read about him, I've gone, oh yeah, he's cool, he's a badass when it comes to fighting and stuff like that, but I haven't really seen the true Sanguinius. I think I need to wait to see how he holds the Eternity Gate, and then he breaks Carbander across his knee. Maybe if that scene is how I imagine it in my head and how it goes down, then he's probably going to be like number 1 or something like that. But that's why I didn't really mention him in the top 5 of my list. I'll also have to mention Lehman Ross. I know, again, I mentioned him previously. The line took his spot. Again, I'll explain it. The reason why I really went off him is because some of the actions he took during the Heresy. I'm like, God damn it, Lehman, stop being such an idiot. Just stay here, fight, and then defend the Emperor. But, he chose different paths, and that ended in some kind of disaster. Well, I don't really go into it, but there was a lot of disaster on his path. Well, you can say it's disaster. He also, you can probably argue, was the cause of victory as well, but that may be going into a bit too much spoilerish. You have to read Wolfsbane and his whole little duel with a certain Primarch in that. Again, incredible book, but for me, Lionel Johnson took over just because of the interactions that he has with all his other brothers. The last honourable mention is Magnus Threat. Just like Angeron, a very, very sad story. The main problem with Magnus is that he thought he was doing well. You know, the whole meme, Magnus did nothing wrong, what people go on about. He actually did think he was doing nothing wrong. He was trying to save the Imperium, but the means that he did broke the Imperium, really, because if he didn't break the seals on Terra, I think the Emperor could have easily intervened, shocked Horace out of, yeeted him out the galaxy, and it would have been over within, like a couple of days. But because of his ways that he informed the Emperor, he just broke everything, and this is what we are at the moment because of his actions. Of course, one of the biggest downfalls is his Legion, the flesh change and stuff like that. He made bargains with Zinch and stuff. He thought he knew the answer, but he really never even understood the question. That was his main problem, and because of that, his Legion fell, and he fell, and now he's a demonic Primarch. Alright, Chaperunio, so that is me done for another video. Thank you for coming, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, just like last video, please put your top 5 Primarchs in the comment section, and we can have a nice little discussion about them down there. Sorry if I never included your Primarch in the list or honourable mentions. It's just because I think they're crap and I hate them to bits. Just kidding, it's just that they just don't really do it for me. But hey, maybe they do it for you. There's nothing wrong with that. Thanks for coming, thanks for watching. See you now, and bye-bye.